Okay, so welcome back to the third week of our APDA Beyond Medication series, Caregiving Considerations. I am joined here with Heidi Huynh, who is an occupational therapist. We are on week three, which is about assisting in walking and walking safely. So Heidi has joined us from her living room. She's joined us from her bedroom, and now she's joining us from the great outdoors. So we get multiple places that we get to do this program from. So thank you for being here again, Heidi. Thank those of you who are here and those of you who are watching on the recording. My name is Jen Gillick. I am the program director here, and I am going to be the monkey behind the curtains. So feel free to raise your hand if you have questions or type it in the chat, but I am going to disappear and let Heidi take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you all for coming back and being here with me, letting me be here with you. As Jen mentioned, we're going to be talking about walking today. Walking, walkers, something to think about walkers. And we'll kind of go through all of it. I'm once again going to go through my slideshow without showing you the slideshow so you can see what I'm looking at. And then we'll send you the slides so you can see everything if you want to refer to it. I have a little helper today. She's going to do a piece with me. And then if at the end we have time, I might circle back and look at some transfers with her as well while she's here. If not, I'm still planning on doing videos to send out for those transfers as well. So I'm going to skip ahead, I think, from what I was going to do so I can show you something with our helper. And then we're going to talk about walkers. So speaking about walking and walking safely, there's many different factors to think about, but also different stages, as everything else we've talked about so far through the Parkinson's process, and when we might be needing different things or different items or different objects. So one thing I'm going to show you real quick is how to assist someone with walking if they're not quite at the point where you're using a walker, but you notice one day that they need a little bit of guidance or a little bit of help and stability while walking. Or maybe we talked, Jen sent me a note last week about tips for like walking down narrow pathways like an auditorium. Maybe you're somewhere where you can't have a walker, or maybe you're going up a few steps and there's a rail on one side but not the other side. This is a way to help someone with stability while walking in those scenarios. So I'm going to show you real quick here. We'll move this. Cameron, can you come with me? This is not how you use a walker, by the way. Go ahead and jump out. I'm out here. Okay. So we're also going to look at the gait belt again that we talked about. So if we're putting this gait belt on, we're going to go through the teeth side. Cameron, okay. I'm going to, wrap this around her and put it through the teeth. And then tighten it up. Nice and snug. And then we come back and come through the other side to make sure that it stays tight. If you do have a lot left over, come back. You can tuck it in the back. Sometimes I just wrap around and kind of halfway go back through here so we have a little bit here. So if you're just walking with someone, come here, please. Or they're doing transfers and you're helping, but they're mostly stable and you just want to help stabilize. I just kind of hold the gait belt here like this. So I put my hand underneath it so I have a hold of it. So if she starts to tumble, I can kind of hold her up, pull her to the side, pull her to the other side. We're not going to go crazy like that, but this is a good way to just kind of walk or stabilize. If she is using a walker, but still needs a little bit extra balance, no, face the walker after using it. I would walk behind her, holding the belt behind her, so I'm not in her way. Sometimes if they need a little bit more stability, I might guide the walker with one hand and hold the belt with the other. But generally, if she's using the walker but needs a little more stability, I'll kind of just hold the gait belt behind. But talking about what we were a second ago, if you don't have a walker and you're walking with someone, I've seen people, just hold someone's hand if you're at the point where you feel like that's what they need. but this really isn't a lot of support or stability for them, and I can't help guide them. If I'm going to help her walking without a walker, I'm going to hold her left hand. Sorry, no, my hands are sweaty. Okay, just pretend. Okay. I'm going to hold her left hand in my left hand, and my right hand is going to be on the gait belt. This way she can kind of push down on me a little bit more, and I'm here and stable to hold onto her hand, and I have support of the gait belt, so if she's walking, I can help guide her with her hand, but also guide her with this gait belt. And we can do the same thing the other way. Stand up. She needs a lot of stability help. I'm going to hold the gait belt with the left hand in the back, and then my right hand is going in her right hand. So her hand is on top of mine. Let's step a little closer so they can see. Her hand is on top of my hand. I call this hand in hand support or whatnot. So her hand is in mine. I have her on the back. Hopefully they're not falling down like this, and they'll be a little more upright. But this could, so if we're walking up a stair rail, she can hold the rail with this hand, and then she can still be facing forward and have support on both sides. Same thing the other way. She can hold the rail with this hand. I can hold here and help her walk up the stairs. So that's okay. You go inside and play quietly. Oh, I'll come back and meet you when I'm ready.
Heidi, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So say somebody has an unstable time and you don't necessarily have their gait belt on, but they're wearing a belt or their belt loops are there or something.
Mm.
Would you suggest that you could hold on to their belt or their belt loops just to add that stability? What would that look like?
Yeah, I would. If you're in a moment where you're walking with someone or they need something and they usually don't use a walker, but you're like, oh, I need to assist them right now. Something's going on. I think that that's okay. I think that the important thing to remember is belt loops aren't as secure. So let's say they did, you were guiding them and something happened and they fell or lunged or there was more force, it wouldn't be as great of support as a gait belt because those loops might break through. But you are able to kind of support and guide them that way. Same thing, sometimes I just grab the back of the pants. If they're wearing pants that don't have a belt or belt loop, like sweatpants or something, they're stretchier, they're not going to give as much support, but you have a little bit of guidance by holding the back of the pants if something were to happen. So definitely belts, belt loops, back of pants is better than nothing. Gait belt is ideal if it's planned.
And it sounds like from what you were demonstrating, you do get your body positioning is better being just a little bit behind them versus like either right in front of them or right beside them.
Yes, exactly. And with this hand in hand approach, I could be next to her. Breath real quick. Have one hand behind her, be right next to her, but I'm closer than if I'm just holding her hand one side and the other. So it gets me closer. I'm able to stand more upright. And then like I said, the hand in hand assist, if they're going upstairs and they're holding a rail and they need to push down on something, they can push down on my hand better if my hand is facing up and theirs is down versus just holding regular hands like that. So that's the best way to help someone with walking if there's not a walker in the space. Like I said, if you're going down some steps or if you're walking through a narrow walkway, let's say you're going on an airplane and you didn't get a walker or a wheelchair from the airport, and they need some support. I mean, there's seats, but if people are in the seats and they don't have a walker, you'd be kind of more behind them because then that's really narrow, but it's a good way to kind of help support someone as they're moving from one place to another. Any other questions on that before I move forward? Bless you. Okay, we're going to talk about
There is Heidi, before you move on to the wheelchair, there is a question in the chat. We have a lift chair for when my husband falls and is not hurt. Do you have any tips for helping someone scrunch to the side? I'm not sure I understand the word scrunch, but maybe you do, or maybe Cynthia can give us a little more insight in this.
I am going, we, yeah, maybe help me understand that a little bit more. I am going to talk about getting up from falling and using tools and not using tools. So we could either wait till we get to that, or we could do that first. It doesn't really matter to me.
Let's wait till we get to
Okay.
that, and then we'll see if what you're showing
Okay.
helps
Remind
answer that
me
question.
if I forget.
Yeah.
Um,
I got a clarity, which
mhm.
we'll get to, but scrunch would be moved to the side by sliding on the floor to the side.
Oh, like scooching over.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Yes.
cover that when we
Well,
get there.
I'll demonstrate some things for that.
Great.
Really warm outside, you guys, today. Okay, so we're going to talk about walkers. I'm going to show you three different types I have here, and then we'll talk about one that I don't have here, and we can look at the pictures at the end. So one is just a basic front wheel walker. So that's this style here. It has two wheels in the front. There's no wheels in the back. Sometimes they have tennis balls on the back. This one has little skid things. Sometimes they're skis, so they're bigger skids. If they have like the grippies and it won't slide, that's when we cut the tennis balls and put them on to help them slide, because we really want it to move with us. We don't want to have to pick up the walker. So this is the most basic. There's a rollator, which both of these are technically considered rollators. They have the four wheels, the seats, and the brakes. So that's something important to remember. This one folds up. Well, it folds up in half this way. And this one is like a flat, sturdy seat, and it folds up the opposite way. So just some differences in the two. They come in different sizes and heights, but these are both called rollators. And then we have an upright walker. I need this real quick. You can stay there, that's fine. So an upright walker is one in which someone has these armrests, and you kind of have your elbows bent and you hold it here versus holding it this way. And it helps people stand more upright. It's taller. It is a little bigger, and we'll go into that in a second. And then there's what's called a U-step walker. And that is one that a lot of people with Parkinson's end up getting. And instead of it rolling and you pushing, squeezing for the brakes, it's always locked, and you have to squeeze the handles to release the brakes to walk. So that helps with some speed and such, which we'll talk about in a minute also. Oops. So I just want to talk for a second about knowing when to get a walker, knowing when is it time to make that transition, or what style walker to use. So one thing that I think is really important is just to have therapy support as needed. If you're thinking that there's been some changes in someone's walking and you're not really sure where to go, or even if you know where to go, I've always said that when people get walkers or rollators like these or anything, it should be like a driver's license where you need to learn how to use it before you use it. But a lot of times people just know they need something, they go online, they buy something, but they don't exactly know what to get or what size to get. So I'm going to kind of give some recommendations, but it's always good if you are able to have your loved one see a therapist, PT or OT. They can help them kind of figure out what is best for them in their situation and their environment, because it all makes a difference what we're going to use it for. So get some therapy support if possible. Also, think about what's the purpose of the walker. Is it because their balance isn't great? Is it because they get tired walking and their endurance is not that great, and having a walker might help them be able to go further? Is it that their posture is getting kind of off and bad, and we're not sure, like we want a walker to help them kind of be more upright in their walking posture? Or is it speed? Are they, going too fast or going too slow and need a walker to kind of help support that? Because thinking about those pieces will kind of help determine what type of walker someone needs. Also, their cognitive abilities. Are they at the point where they can remember to lock their brakes and remember to position a rollator or an upright walker appropriately to move around it? Or do they need something more simple with not as many pieces to think about that they can just use for stability and walking? So those are all things to think about when we're talking about what style walker to use. In terms of when to start using a walker, if things are getting tougher, if there's stumbling, if there's tripping, if there's loss of balance, a lot of people, and I mention this a lot. I don't know if I've mentioned it in this course or not yet, but people are like, oh, I don't need a walker, or walkers are for old people, or walkers are for, whatever is needed. And they're resistant to using a walker. Many people see it as a barrier. I see it as a tool to help expand independence. You don't become dependent on a walker, but you use a walker to help increase your independence in what you're doing. So remembering that is important also. Plus, they're kind of convenient, right? If you transition to a rollator and you want to start putting things, in the seat or having a place to sit, which we'll talk about again in a minute. But a walker and transitioning to a walker isn't necessarily a sign of going downhill. It's a sign of an opportunity to go back uphill. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're talking with your loved one about, is it time or not to get a walker? So I'm going to go back to each style of walker a little bit and talk about them and why you would choose that over something else. So if we come over here and we grab this front wheel walker, the most basic. This kind of, I'm going to kind of go backwards in a sense. Watch out, please. So this front wheel walker is going to be slower because there's only 2 wheels. The rollators and the things with 4 wheels are going to go faster. So this one is slower. So if someone has a hard time moving too fast and they need to slow down, this is a good option. It is stable. Some people feel like it's not because, there's not as much holding it down, but we're not pulling up on it when we're standing, right? We always push up from our seat and then we grab it. But since there's not wheels on it, not 4 wheels, it is a little more stable and gives some greater stability. It's smaller, so it doesn't take us up as much space. So if you're moving in a small space, your bedroom, in the bathroom, around the toilet, near the shower, if you just have less space to move with in terms of turning, the wheelbase and the depth of it is smaller because the wheels are smaller, so it's easier to turn. Sorry, airplanes. So we get for being outside. The turning radius is smaller than one of the bigger walkers, and so you don't need as much space to move around. Also, you can step into it. So if someone has only so much space in their bathroom and they're going to go brush their teeth, and let's say this is the sink right over here, I can come this way and I can step up into the walker and do my thing and brush my teeth, and I have this right here to hold on to, or if I'm doing something with one hand, I can do that. Rather than the seat is here and like reaching over, we don't want to reach over, so we would have to turn it and do different positioning. So this is simpler in the sense that you don't need to think of as much. There's not as many bells and whistles. You can get bags to put on these to hold things. You can't even get a tray that takes away the ability to walk into it, but you could get a tray to set things on if you wanted to, that kind of go over the handles. So this is stable, slow, smaller, easier to navigate, easier to get around. It's like I said, it's slower. So some people don't like it in the sense that they feel like it's harder to move or harder to push because it doesn't wheel as easily. Not as great for outdoor use, can totally be used outdoors, but it doesn't have the big wheels for the outdoor terrain. They do have different wheel sizes, but generally they're smaller than other walkers. So this is just a front wheel walker. Yes. The next one is a rollator walker. So we'll come over to this one. Again, this is what not to use the walker for. I don't want to see you guys rolling your loved one on the seat. I see people do it all the time. It says right on the walker, warning, do not move rollator while seated. That's not what it's for. It's not for them to get tired and you push them. There's other options to be able to have different tools that you can help push and walk someone on, but these are not it. So for these rollators, they're smoother. They have the 4 wheels, so they move more smoothly. They're convenient because they have either this type has the pouch in front, which like I said, you could add a pouch to the other one, or in this style, you would flip the seat up and there's a pouch to put things under the seat. So there's two different styles here. And these are just based on preference. But something to think about is they are a little bit bigger and you need to think about how to move around them. So if I'm going to come up to the sink and the sink is right in front of me, like I said, I don't want to be reaching over the rollator to use the sink. I would want to turn it, lock the brakes and then turn towards the sink so I could be closer to the sink and do what I need to do. And when I do that, I also need to think about these wheels. They do stick out a little bit, so I don't want someone to park here and then turn and step over this wheel. That's why we turn it even more to get the wheel out of the way, and then we're where we need to be, or we support it this way. So there's more factors to think about, pieces to remember. We need to make sure that people remember to lock the brakes. And the positioning, like I showed you, is important. So these are a little bit better for outside because they typically have a little bit bigger wheels. They also make different styles with different sizes of wheels as everything. But we need to lock the brakes. We need to position it. It is convenient. Also, there is a seat, right? I don't recommend people just stop anywhere and sit. 100% we need to lock the brakes. If you're in an open space, then you can lock the brakes, and if someone's with you, help them sit. But I would always recommend to, if you can, push this side up against a wall. Let's say, I don't know if you can see the post or not. My thing is in the way. You can see the post. Okay. So if I go up against the post and then I lock the brakes and I turn and I sit, this way when I'm going to transition to standing, if I do push back a little bit, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to push back behind me. I know it's locked, but you never know when something might move. But having a wall or a post or something to support it is easier to kind of push up. And then I don't want people to swing the walker around. Once we push up, we turn, and then we unlock the brakes, and then we go on our way. So these are nice that if you are going longer distances, you live in a building with long hallways, or you're going shopping and you know that you might get tired, or the person you're with might get tired, it is an option to sit on. And so that is a good purpose of that walker. Now, the upright walker, let's take a look at this one, is larger, and the wheels from front to back is much further, typically in this style walker. So you need a lot more space to move and turn around. I went with someone to their apartment from skilled nursing yesterday, to their independent living apartment, to just kind of navigate around and see what was going on. And she had an upright walker. And it was very difficult, like once we pulled up next to her bed, to have space to turn all the way around to then go leave, once she was leaving her bed, just because it's so much wider. Some people have homes where they have space, and so this is great for them and they can use it in their home. Some people will use a smaller walker in the home, but use these walkers for going out and about, or going down longer hallways. What's great about these is it does help some people stand upright. There are these armrests, and then you fold the handles this way. So also some people, if they have wrist or hand problems and they have a hard time holding this style of handle in this direction, either way, we don't want to be pushing, but sometimes we do, and that hurts them. We can kind of get in this position. And each walker, if you use it appropriately, you can get in better and worse positioning if you don't use it appropriately. But with this style, it just kind of helps to guide people to stand upright, because they're not worried about reaching down for anything, and their arms are kind of resting. Their back is straight, and they can walk this way. So it helps people keep upright, but it is larger, not good for small spaces. And then we have the U-step walker, which I don't have here, but we talked about. And that's the one where you squeeze to walk. So that's great because it's easy to slow down if you need to. If someone starts walking too fast, you just let go. And you don't have to worry about what do I do and how do I slow down. You just not let go of the whole walker, but let go of the squeezed handles. So you can control your speed a little bit easier. It is somewhat bulky. It is heavy. It's not very transportable. I don't remember if it folds or not, but it is heavy. I don't think it does fold. It has a bigger base that goes kind of all the way around the front of someone rather than just being on the sides. So it's a great walker for someone who needs greater stability and speed control. Not great for getting in small spaces or getting in and out of the car. Same thing with, I got these all in the back of my car today, but this one, it's bigger, right? So it's tougher. These rollators fold pretty well, depending the size of car or trunk you have. There's some that are heavier than others, some that are lighter than others. And then of course the little front wheel walkers are super easy to just fold up and stick in the car, and they're nice and light. So different purposes for each one. Like I said, sometimes people have multiple walkers and use them for depending on what they're doing. Sometimes they find one that they can kind of use for everything. So it just depends on where your loved one is at in their journey and what type of support they're needing for their walking. Any questions? We're going to still talk about sizing of walkers and whatnot, but just any questions about the specifics of any of these 4 different types of walkers and why you might do one or over the other or vice versa. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the chat. Okay. So next we're going to talk about how to size a walker for somebody. With a standard walker, just like a regular, so whether it's a rollator or a front wheel walker, when you are standing up and you have your hands down by your sides, you want your wrist to be right about the same level as the handle of the walker. So I'm going to get a little closer so you can see that. My hand is down by my side. My wrist is right at this walker. So this walker is a very good height for me. I know a lot of people who have their walkers way up high because they think that if it's low, they're going to end up hunched. But what really happens is if they have it up high, not only are their arms kind of scrunched, so it doesn't get them in a good position, but then it's too high, so then they hold it out in front of them, and then that's when we end up leaning over because the walker is out too far in front. If you have it right at that wrist level, you can stand closer to the walker, so again, keeping you more upright, and then you're not leaning into the walker, like I said. That's not the goal of a walker, but we're holding it to kind of help with our stability and our ability to stay upright. And there might be a little bit of leaning into it, right, in different circumstances. But by having it at this height, standing close, then we're in an upright position and we can move more easily. Our shoulders aren't scrunched. We're not hunched over. So same thing with the front wheel walker. This one is about right for my height also. Nice, I don't need to adjust it. I'll still show you how. But I have my hand down by my side. The handle is right about my wrist. So I'm able to stand upright. I'm not hunched over. I'm not scrunched up. My arms are relaxed. It's right here. And I'm standing with my feet between these legs. I'm not back behind it. I also know a lot of people who keep the walker out in front of them and their feet never really go into it. You really want to step into the walker as you use it so your hands are by your sides, not out in front of you. Same thing with the rollator. I stand close to it. My feet are between these wheels. My feet aren't back behind the wheels. My feet are in between the wheels as I'm walking. So that's another thing to think about is the size of someone's feet and the width of their, gait pattern and their walking and kind of what size walker we would want because We don't want someone to be, back here because they don't fit. We want their feet to be able to fit between the wheels so they can stand upright and be close to the walker. With an upright walker, it's a little different. And I will say, I'm sure they come in different sizes, but so this one is at its lowest setting. And it's just about at my height, and I'm 5'3". So someone who is shorter than me would not be able to use this walker. I was trying to set it up for someone who is shorter than me, and she was down here and then her arms are way up above her. That's not what we want. We want you to be standing straight, pretty much put your arms at a 90-degree angle. So this is maybe even a little bit tall for me. And then you can step forward into the walker and your hands rest on these handles and brakes right here. So again, we don't want your shoulders up. We want your arms relaxed. Like I said, I would probably be better suited for one where my arms could be right here, where my arm is straight down, my elbow's about at 90 degrees, and I could just slide it into that armrest here. This one's not bad. I'm not super scrunched, but I do feel it a little bit. My shoulders are up. So it's all about finding, this must be a big and tall because it can go up way higher, but it doesn't go any lower. So it's all about finding the right size walker also when you're looking for those things. Thinking about positioning, like I said, we want to stand close to the walker, having our feet in between it. We don't want to lean into it. We're using it for balance and positioning, not, putting all of our weight. As I said before, I'm just going to demonstrate again. We don't want to hold it out in front of us because then we end up punched over. It doesn't matter if it's tall or low. If it's out in front of us, we're going to end up punched over. So we want to be up in the walker. And as we move, we keep it with us in that position at all times. So I'm going to walk forward. I'm going to turn. It's still, my feet are within these wheels. I'm keeping it close to me. As I come up here, let's say again that this is the sink. I want to not kind of move it over this way and come over to the sink. I want to keep the walker with me all the way up to where I'm going. Get nice and close. Turn so the wheel is out of the way. I know you can't see the wheel here, but then I could turn and be at the sink to do what I'm doing and still kind of have this to hold on to, or the counter. Same thing if I'm like getting into the closet or the refrigerator or anywhere where I'm going up to a kitchen cabinet maybe. We want to turn it. We can use this handle for support and then use this hand for what we're doing, but I don't want to have to step around the wheel to get to where I'm going. So I want to make sure that I'm turning it all the way to be out of the way before I get to where I'm going. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, don't use the walker like this. Do as I say, not as I do. Any question about sizing or positioning walkers? Awesome. Okay, so we already talked about walking. I'm just going to kind of summarize that again to make sure we didn't miss anything. So using the gait belt and holding it in the back behind someone. We can use a hand to support a walker, if needed for guidance. Like I kind of showed that, but if she was here and I was holding her gait belt, I could kind of have my hand on the walker, but I'd rather you not move the walker. I'd rather them be in a position where they can safely move it and you kind of just help hold them for stability. If we are walking with someone, specifically someone with Parkinson's, depending again on kind of where they're at and what different types of symptoms they're having or difficulties that they might be having, we want to provide short, clear instructions as needed. We want to try to be simple and remind them of these things that we're talking about today without using long run-on sentences, without talking too much at them. So it might be like stand upright or step closer to the walker or show me how tall you are. Sometimes I'll say that. They'll be, hunched over and I'm taller than them, but they're really 4 inches taller than me. So stand nice and tall. Remember to lock your brakes. Don't forget to lock your brakes, lock your brakes, lock your brakes, lock your brakes. But we don't want to talk too much at someone. We want to just provide short, clear instructions as we need to. Also allow your loved one to focus. Not everyone has this problem, but a lot of people with and without Parkinson's, as we get older and we're walking and trying to control our bodies more, it's harder to multitask. And walking and talking is multitasking. Sometimes I'll be walking with someone down the hall and I'll ask them a question and then we stop so they can answer me. And I think, Heidi, don't ask them questions while we're walking. Get to where we're going and then sit down and then we can talk to them. So some people will be fine and you'll know, your loved one, but if it is something that's harder for them, try to remember not to just talk and have conversation if that makes it difficult for them. I'm working with someone in a building who has Parkinson's and he has a difficult time walking. He just gets distracted very easily. So he was telling me if it's, something that he doesn't really have to think about, how's the weather or whatnot, he can walk and talk. But if there's any thinking involved, he can't do it. He says he can't chew gum and walk because it's just two things at the same time. If he'll be walking down the hall and if someone else is coming towards him, he knows that he has to stop and wait for them to pass him. And then he can continue walking, but it's hard for him to walk towards someone as he sees something else moving towards him. So if you're walking with your loved one and you notice any of those things, or sorry, maybe they stop a lot when you're in a crowd, maybe think about that could be what's happening. They could be getting distracted and overwhelmed by other things moving around them. And we might need to be just conscientious of that and help support them as needed as we're walking in crowds or walking around other people. And then we already talked about the handheld technique, left hand in their left hand, right hand in their right hand, hold the gait belt with the other hand, and just kind of help guide. Any questions about that? Okay. Before we talk about car transfers, because I want to show a video on that, I'm going to go to helping someone who has fallen. So if someone has fallen and you want to help them up, if possible, assess safety first, of course, right? We want to make sure, did they hit their head? Are they injured? Did they possibly break something that we don't want to move them because that could make it worse? Is it a situation where we need to call 911 and have them be assessed? Or is it a situation where while they're on the floor, have them move their arms and their hands and their legs up and down a little bit and just make sure they're able to move, make sure they're able to answer questions. Is anything hurting? Did you hit your head? Does your head hurt? Maybe check their head and just make sure there's no bleeding or anything that could be dangerous for them or you. Make sure that you're in a space that gives you the space to be able to help them without poor body mechanics that might hurt you. So are you in a position to be able to help? And are they safe and stable before you help them? Also, is there something we can do to kind of set up the environment to assist them? Someone talked about how they have a floor lift chair to help someone when they've fallen, but yes, you need to get to that chair. But is there, okay, I was with someone once and I walked into her apartment and she was on the ground when I got there. And she was in the corner over here and she didn't want to tell the nursing staff that she had fallen. They ended up coming and of course they needed to know to make sure that she was safe, but she was trying to get to another location so she could try to get herself up. And at first she is spending, we were able to get her around. She ended up on her hands and knees and she was crawling over to the couch, which was on the other side of the room. But then I thought I could easily, with me being how I was able to move in the furniture, move the couch closer to her. And then she was able to get up and sit on the couch. So is there a way that we can move a chair or something closer to someone to help them get up if they were able to use that to do so? Again, it's just safety. I'm going to kind of show you a technique that we use to help just kind of demonstrate and easier way for some people to get up. Sometimes I'll practice this movement routine with people on the bed just to practice getting in the movement. Can they get on their hands and knees? Can they sit that way? But we're on the bed, so you're not on the floor stuck if you can't get up. You can just roll over onto the bed and then sit up if you need to. This is something that someone could practice with therapy if they're getting therapy. So I'm just going to kind of show it to you, but just remember safety first. Not everyone will be able to move in this way, but this is what we were taught in kind of a safe way if someone is able to move on their own to get up. If you're completely lifting them, we'll do it a little bit differently, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to move this here, I think. And I'm gonna get on the floor. See, this should be interesting anyway. So I have fallen. Oh goodness. And I'm on my back and I'm on the floor. And I need to get up. What do I do? So I learned this in kind of thinking about how does the human body begin to move and develop. We start off on our backs. The first thing we learn how to do is roll over. Then we learn how to crawl. Then we learn how to walk. So we kind of take that sequencing into mind. So I'm going to be on my back. And as we talked about with bed mobility, it's easier to roll if we have our legs to help us. So we want to try to have them bend their knees. Like I said, not everyone will be able to do this, but for the people who can, this is a good technique. Bend their knees and then reach over and roll onto their side. Once someone's on their side, they can use this hand and this arm to kind of push up onto their elbow, kind of like when we're getting out of bed, right? But we're on the floor and not on a bed. From here, then I can move into a somewhat sitting position. And then I'll try to move from here, reach this arm out and get onto my hands and knees. So now we're at the point where we are, maybe crawling. If someone needs to move and crawl to get to where they can try that. I'm going to use, the screen is in my way. This post to help me because it's right here. But I could also, if there was a chair or something, kind of push up on. But if someone can, they can grab something to kind of get onto their knees. And then let's say there was a chair here. Could we use it? We want to get 1 foot up. And then we can kind of try to, pull or push on something to then sit in a chair if there was a chair there. If they're able to do that process, but not 100% on their own, we can guide them, right? So let's say someone's on the ground and you can help put their feet in this position. If they can reach, you can help kind of push on the side to get them to roll over. If you were going to help someone get up from here, I would recommend kind of grabbing under their shoulder and lifting up. Again, we don't want to pull on their arms to pull somebody up. So we would want to, let me see if I can grab something real quick. You come here? Can you help me with something? Okay, can you lay on the floor? Okay, of course, she's smaller than someone else would be, but I can help her bend your knees, and then we're gonna roll that way. So I want you to take your hand and reach, and I'm gonna grab behind her shoulder and her leg, just like the bed mobility, and roll her on her side. Now, hold on, I gotta scoot you back a little bit, okay? So they can see better. I want you to put this hand here and push on that hand to help you sit up. I'm gonna take this hand and kind of reach under her shoulder as I can. Lift your head up a little bit and help by her shoulder and pull her up to this position. Then when she gets here, can you get on both your hands and then get on your hands and your knees? So don't move yet. I can kind of help guide behind my hands down here, behind her back and behind her hip to help her get into her hands and knees. Now notice that I'm also down low and on the ground. In just a second. I'm also down on the ground and moving. So this isn't something to help someone with if you're not in the the position to safely help them. I'm watching my back. I'm down close to where they are and helping them move. Now, if she was, can you get up on your knees? Hands and knees, sorry, like you're crawling. Okay, then let's say we want to get her to this chair. Oops. Okay, can you put your hand up here? And then we want to get one knee up on the ground. They might not be able to do that. If they can, this is a way to help. From here, you can kind of just help up. I mean, she's not going to be able to sit here because it's too tall, but turn and sit if that kind of makes sense. In terms of scooting, good job. If someone's on the floor, it kind of depends on how they move and how they need to be positioned. So could you, for a second, the one who asked that question, let me know, just unmute yourself for a second. What position do they need to be in for your assist chair to work? Do they need to be sitting? Do they need to be like on their side or on the ground? Or how exactly does that work?
Usually he asks me to get him in a sitting position on the floor.
Okay. Okay.
Then he tries to go to the side,
Okay.
but he can't bend his knees.
Okay. So if he's in a sitting position on the floor, he's trying to like scoot this way.
Correct.
And that's hard, especially if you can't bend your knees. So I would recommend, I mean, it depends on how they're able to move and how agile they are. One thing you could do is instead of sitting first, you could try to scoot while they're down. If he can bridge, if he's able to kind of bridge, you can just kind of scoot a little bit at a time and walk those feet, and then you can kind of help move the shoulders, walk the feet, lift up and kind of bridge. And then if he can't bend his knees, I don't know if you can help him at all, but try to get the rolling and the sitting to be closer to where you are. I think it would be easier to move that way than scoot this way. He probably can't get on hands and knees if he can't bend his knees, because crawling would be
But I
easier than
liked your
scooting.
idea of having him kind of roll on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And then his butt is off the ground, and I could kind of slide the ramp of the chair under there.
Yeah, yep, you could do that. So if he's kind of down and rolls over, you could put the chair here
Right.
and then kind of help him roll back on it and sit up and then use that way.
Yes, that's good information. Thank
That would
you.
probably be easier than scooting like I am now. Okay. Any questions about getting up from a fall? Again, I mean, just think safety. Sorry, there are a lot of cars out this afternoon. Okay, I'm going to see if I can pull this up and then share my screen to talk about getting in and out of a car real quick. Also, just so you guys know, when Jen does send out this PowerPoint, on one of the slides where it talks about the different walkers, there's a link that says information about a rollator. I honestly don't know everything that it says. But I found a video on YouTube that I did a couple years ago that's called All About Rollator Walkers, or the ins and out of rollator walkers. So it talks about sizing it like we did. It demonstrates how to make the armrest higher and lower. That's something we didn't do today, which we can maybe talk about next week if you guys want to see that. But that's in that video also, but it should be in the link. But I'm going to pull up this one real quick. Hang on one second. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but it's just music, so you don't really need to hear it. Let me share my
When
screen.
you share it, you'll have a little check mark that says share computer sound, and check that if
Okay,
you see it.
share sound. Oh, look at that. Optimize for video sharing. I'll click that too.
Sure.
Okay, which I'm just gonna select this one. Okay, hang on. If I click on this, can you guys see the video, or do you still see the PowerPoint?
We still see the PowerPoint.
Okay, well, that's not helpful. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing that. Let me make sure this, where does it go? Oh, this internet. Okay. Share here.
Okay, we
Now,
see a video.
okay, so this is sped up, so it's in fast motion. Essentially, Tessa is going to open the door. I'm going to walk up to the car, turn away from it, lock the brakes of the walker. So this is from a walker. We'll talk about from a wheelchair in a minute. Sit down and then kind of spin around. It does not show the handy dandy car handle, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's tools to kind of help. So we'll just watch this for like the positioning and the sequencing of getting in and out of a car. Kind of scoot back, put my legs in, and then she can move the walker. So again, that kind of shows, that shows me doing it, right? And I was moving very easily. So it would be slower. There are pieces that would be harder. But we just want to kind of turn and sit sideways on the seat and then kind of scoot back. We'll talk about this next week because we're talking about tools and stuff, but a car handle hook that you can hook in there and use as an extra base of support to kind of help push yourself back or stand up when you get out of the car. You can use the little handle thing above to help kind of scoot back, or the dashboard to scoot back. They have things that you can like roll down the window and have the loop and have someone like use the door. I don't love those just because doors can shut. If you were there to kind of hold the door open and make sure it stays steady and stable, that's an option. But we want to just kind of scoot back, get one leg in at a time. When they're getting out of the car, they'll get the legs out one at a time and be facing away from the car. But then, seats kind of go up, right? And you got to go up that uphill a little bit. So it is tricky. We can kind of like, we talked about other ways to scoot forward where they lean and you help push one hip forward and they lean the other way and you help shift the other hip forward, because we want to make sure they're sitting as far at the edge of that seat as possible so their feet can be bent and back behind them so they can lean forward and stand up like any other sit to stand with that positioning with your feet underneath them. That car handle is my favorite tool for helping push up to stand up. If you're doing it from a wheelchair, it depends on how people transfer. If they typically transfer by standing and turning, kind of the stand pivot we talked about the first week, either by holding on to things, they can do it that way. If you are holding the door steady, that's something to hold on to. If they're kind of more at the squat pivot transfer technique where they're in the wheelchair, but you're kind of helping move them, we can do the same thing. We would still want the pizza slice angle with the wheelchair and the car, but then it's hard because the car door is on the other side. So you'd have to kind of figure out a way to position right so that you could be in there and be close to them and help them kind of scoot. So I'm thinking if I'm in a wheelchair, I would be facing the front of the car. Like I would be facing forward, parallel next to the car. Like here's the car, this is the front of the car, this is the door, and this is the wheelchair, and they're facing, that way. So then the person would kind of turn. I'll do a video on that too. Haven't done that one. I've only done it from a walker. So I'll do a video on that to kind of demonstrate how I would help someone move from a wheelchair to the car if they weren't fully standing, and it was more of a squat pivot situation. Any questions on that? or anything else we talked about today? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for coming and being here and being flexible with me missing last week. And we will be back next week to talk about some cool, helpful tools to help with different situations while you are helping them help themselves. As always, if you have questions, let us know so that we can bring it up. I'm going to do my best to film some videos this weekend and have them sent out before next week. So if you guys have questions, we can talk about those. I'm not going to make promises, but I'm going to do my best. But they will happen and we will get them.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm going to
Thank you.
stop recording. Thanks for watching the video, everybody.